Hi everyone, this is Heather Gershinsky coming to you with a tutorial on Google Forms. Google Forms can be used to create surveys, but more importantly, it can be used to make online tests for your students. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you the basics of forms and how to create a form and make it into a test that your students can take online. I will have another tutorial that's a little more advanced. It's going to show you then how to have those tests created for you using one of the Google scripts that are available online. So if you already know how to use forms and you've already created a survey or a test using forms, you can go ahead and check out the other tutorial, and that will show you how to use Flugaroo to grade the tests. So I'm going to get started with the basics. First thing you're going to need to do is be logged into your Google and go to your Drive. The same place that you go to create a new document or a spreadsheet is where you're going to go for this as well. So if you click Create, you can click on Form, and it's going to pop up this your first time at least. I always have it show it to me so I can change the theme before I forget. The title, I'm just going to make it a sample test, and the theme is just the background, what it's going to look like. So I'm going to choose something a little more interesting and click OK. So now that theme has been applied. It won't show up as you're editing the test, but if you want to see what it's going to look like to the person taking the test or the survey, you can click this View Live Form, and it will open it up in a new tab and show you with the theme that you've chosen. So I'm going to come back to this screen for right now. Just a few things that you will notice. You've got your same options as you have for Google Docs in the Google Forms section. You can click here to rename your test or your whatever form you're creating. You can share, you can make copies, move to certain folders. Again, you've got a lot of the same options as you do for Google Docs. One you might notice that's new is responses, and I will come back to this later. This is where you're going to see the answers to the tests that your students have input. But like I said, I'll show you that in a little bit. At the top you have some options. Your first option here, I always check this when I'm giving a test to my students. It's to require Portage login to view the form. So if you are having parents take a survey or somebody like it outside of the school district that you want their answers, you will probably want to uncheck that. But since I'm going to be giving a test, I want my students to have the access to the school email to get this form and to fill it out. You can also automatically collect their username. You can have them actually enter it in on their own, but if it's a test, especially, you're going to want to check that. If you want an anonymous survey, though, if you leave this unchecked, their name won't show up on the responses. So I do want to check that since it is a test. I want to know how each student individually answered. And then at the bottom, last option here is to show a progress bar at the bottom of the form pages. That's for if you have more than one page on your test, it'll show them how much more of the test they have to go. So I called it the sample test. Like I showed you before, I can do a few different types of things for my description. Here you can add directions. You can also add directions to the help test text down here. The way that I like to organize my tests is I like to have a different page for each section of the test. So I'm going to show you the test that I'm going to be creating and turning into this sample test. And it's the energy test that the 7th grade science students take. So you'll notice that this particular test has matching and multiple choice in it. And that's pretty much the extent of where I'm going to go with it for this tutorial. You can also do text, and I'll show you an example of that as well. But the first thing I want is matching, and so there isn't really an option for matching. If you look at the question types here, you can do text, which is just a short word or two. Paragraph text if you want them to give you an actual like essay type answer to a question or a short answer. Multiple choice. Check boxes, that's so that they can check more than one option. So that might be more for a survey, or if you have a question that has more than one answer to it, or correct answer. Choosing from a list, again, they can choose multiple from a list. And then you've got some other options here: date, time, grid, scale. Those are probably not ones you'll use very often, but feel free to sort of look into that as much as you want. Scale is just for if they want to rank something 1 to 5, give it a score. So that's typically not going to be on a test, but it could be on a survey. So I, like I said, don't really have an option for matching. There's nowhere for me to have them match the letters with the statements. So what I do is I kind of turn it into a multiple choice question. But instead of only giving them 3 or 4 options, I give them all of these options. So let me show you kind of what that looks like. So the first question is, energy cannot be created or destroyed, only changed in form. So that might be my first question. Okay, and then I want them to know that the answer is law of conservation of energy. But again, because there's no matching option, I'm going to have to list my different options. So I'm going to list as a option each of the matching options that are over here on this side. So I am going to make it like a multiple choice. So LED was the first one. So that's one option they can check. I click enter and it takes me down to the next one, or you can tab a couple times. If you tab once, it's going to have you click on this X, which will delete the question or the option. But then if you tab again, it'll take you down here. So I had LED, kinetic is the next one. Law of conservation of energy. And then I had potential, energy, and electromagnetic. So there are all of the options that they could choose from for this. So I want them to know that it's the law of conservation of energy. Now I can click done and I can add another item, but because I want to still test them on the same list, rather than retyping the list every time, I can actually click this button here where it says duplicate. And now all I have to change is the question. My options are still going to be the same. So this works really well for multiple choice. My second one was stored energy. So I would just put in stored energy. And then I can save it. Now, what you'll want to also do is required question. I want them to answer every question on the test. I don't want them to be able to submit the test without having it finished. So I click required question, and you'll notice that it puts a little red star. That means it's required. It will not let them submit it without having that question answered. This one I forgot to do that, so if I just go to the edit button here, I can go back down to required question and save it. Now if I want to create my third question, I can duplicate this one. Now that because it already has the red star, because it's a required question, if I duplicate it, my new one is also going to automatically have that checked. So another nice thing, you don't really have to remember to do that every time if you duplicate. So the third one was energy that travels in waves. So I would just put something like this, change the question like I said. And again, help text is just to give them a little hint if you want to. I don't do that very often unless it's a survey. I might give them like a sample of what they might say in the survey. And done. So I would go ahead and do that for all of my multiple choice, or my matching ones until I got through all 6. Now again, I want it in sections, so for me, after they're done with this section, I want this part, the multiple choice, to be on a new page. So to do that, I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, and it says add item, and here I would put a page break. So this is a new page, so I might say multiple choice questions, and description, choose the best answer for each question. Done, and then I can add my multiple choice again. Now I can simply write the question. So Lori has the most kinetic energy when she is. And then again, help text if you want. I'm going to skip that. Multiple choice. So their options were sitting in a chair, standing on the deck, and again I just hit enter and it brings me on to the next one. Walking slowly or riding a bicycle. And there are my options. So I'm going to click done. And again, I can add as many of those multiple choice questions as I want. So let's say now I'm done with the multiple choice and I want to now go on to short answer questions. Here I'm going to make it a new page because it's a different type of question and it'll have different directions. So I'm going to make a third page called short answer. Maybe using complete sentences, answer questions in 3 to 5 sentences. Okay. Now, instead of adding multiple choice, here I can add text, which again lets me add a couple words or paragraph text if I want something a little longer. Since I asked for 3 to 5 sentences, that would be more of a paragraph style answer. So my question title, maybe something about explain how your group completed the lab using cars and ramps. And then my help text here might be really helpful, something like hint, discuss potential and kinetic energy. And then I will leave it as a paragraph text, but again here you can kind of change that, and then they can type in their answer right there. Again, I'm going to make it a required question because I do want them to complete it for the test, and I'm done with that. So let's say I'm done with my test and now I'm ready to give the test and send it to my students. You have again some more options. Show a link to submit another response. They can then click the link and it'll take them to the form itself. Publish and show a link the results to all respondents. You don't really want to do that unless you're sending out a survey. That would, I guess, allow the students to see all of the answers that people have entered, so you don't want to do that. And then allow responders to edit responses after submitting. If it's a test, I don't want them to change their answers after they've submitted it, but if you feel that that's something that you want, you can certainly do that. So I'm going to go ahead and send it. And here's where I can send it to my students, and you can use Google Groups for that, which you'll have to check out in another tutorial. Or if you just have a few students you want to send it to, you can do that. So I'm going to send it to myself. Okay. The other option is if you have a website that your students go to, like your own staff web page, you can actually also embed it. And if you go to your web page and you copy this, you can just put it on there and it'll actually show up right on the website. So if it's easier for you to put it on your website and have them take it, you can feel free to do that. I would just send it by email myself, but and then I can click send. And again, I send it to myself here. Okay. So now in my email, I'll get an invitation to take the test. A couple of things that you will also want to note is that the accepting responses button is going to be really important. You will not want to change this until the students are done testing. Or if you only want to give them, let's say, an hour to test, you'll want to turn this off initially. So right now it's not accepting responses. So if a student were to log in right now and try to take the test, like say from home, they couldn't. But then at the beginning of the class hour, I can come into here and I can click this and make it accepting responses, and then they can submit it. And then at the end of the hour, I would probably close it out again just so that they can't go home and try to finish the test or take it another time. And it's very similar to if you give a paper test. Obviously, you don't want them to leave the room with the test itself, so you can also just go into your responses and see that they've all completed it before they leave. So there's a few different classroom management type things you can do with it. Again, if you want to view it now that it's all completed, you can click here, and it tells you right at the top that my username is going to be recorded, so students will know that this is not an anonymous test. It's something I'm going to record because I checked that button. Again, my required questions are starred, and here is the bar that it tells you about. The completion bar is where it shows how much of the test they've already completed. So at the end of this page, they've completed about a third of it. So if they submit the answers to the questions, and then what will happen is be recorded into a spreadsheet for you. So I'm going to show you what it looks like from the student's end. So they would receive this email, which is sample test, and I can click right on it, and actually they can fill it out right from their email. But for me, I personally like them to click on it and fill it out online just in case anything else happens, but it's again up to you. So if they click on it, it's going to bring them to the sample test with the background and the theme that I chose. So I would let them, you know, take time to work on their test. When they're done, I'll show you what it looks like. And again, continue. Multiple choice, I only had one. And again, they'll take that. Short answer. And then they would fill that in. I'm not going to fill it in all the way. And then they can send a copy of their responses. I would encourage them to do that, because then if they try to challenge you on whether they got one right or wrong, they have a copy of it, you have a copy of it, but it's kind of up to them. And now here it shows that after I click submit, I'm 100% done with the test. And then my default was your response has been recorded. And again, they can create their form. So then they can close it. And because I had it send me my responses, I can see exactly how I responded as a student. And then that I can save just for my own records of how I answered the questions. I can go home and look at my notes and see if I answered them right and kind of get an idea how I did. But the nice thing about Google Forms is that you get feedback pretty much right away. If I go back to my sample test form, I'm going to close this one, then I can see now that I have one response. So because I took the test, I can accept or I can view that response. I can either do that here by view responses, but every time you make a Google form, if you go to your drive, you'll notice that if I search for my sample test, I also have a separate spreadsheet called sample test responses. It made that automatically. I did not have to go in and make that. It did it automatically because I used a form. So I can click on that to view my responses, or like I said, you can get to it by clicking response, view responses. It's going to do the same thing. It's going to open up that spreadsheet. So I can close that right now. Now, I can see exactly when the test was taken. So if you are worried that students might be taking it outside of class or something, you can certainly check the time, exactly when it was taken and submitted. Here are the different questions. Username, it is listing who I am, who signed in to take it. And again, I can tell which student that is then by their email. Here are all of the answers to the test. So this is how I answered: stored energy, potential, question, answer. And then here's my essay response. So you can use this to help grade. And again, the test is all online. No need to make copies. It's all right here for you. And then as students are added to this, it will add. So there you have it. That is the basics of how to use Google Forms. Again, how to make a test using Google Forms, using the different options, and how to record that, and then how to see the answers in the spreadsheet that is created for you from Forms automatically. If you want to learn more, the next step would be to watch the second tutorial about Google Forms, and in that tutorial I will show you how to take this information and have the script grade it for you so that you don't have to go through and grade it yourself, which is really handy. And it's also a really good tool for formative assessment, so watch that tutorial if you're interested in how to do all of those things. Thanks for watching.